Have you ever walked into a room and felt that something had changed? Your friends still smile. They still laugh with you. They still say they support you. But somehow, their energy feels different. Maybe they celebrate your failures more than your victories. Maybe they disappear when something good happens to you. Maybe every achievement you share somehow becomes a competition. And sometimes the most dangerous people in your life aren't the ones who openly attack you. They're the ones standing beside you while secretly hoping you don't go any further. But here's the important part. Not every strange behavior means someone secretly hates you. People can be stressed. People can become distant. Friendships can naturally change. The real question is whether you're seeing a repeated pattern, because one cold message means nothing. One missed invitation means nothing. But when the same behavior keeps happening again and again, you need to pay attention. In this video, we're going to examine the subtle psychological signs that may reveal envy, resentment, hidden competition, disrespect, or a friendship that is no longer healthy for you. And we're going to approach it through ideas associated with Robert Greene's work on human nature, social dynamics, envy, power, and observation. Because one of the greatest mistakes you can make is judging people only by what they say. People reveal themselves through patterns. They reveal themselves through reactions. They reveal themselves through what happens when you succeed. And sometimes your greatest clue isn't how someone treats you when you're struggling. It's how they behave when you're finally winning. Part 2, they don't celebrate your success. Pay attention to what happens when something good happens in your life. You get a promotion. You launch a business. You achieve a personal goal. You become more confident. You meet someone you really like. A genuine friend doesn't have to be perfect. They don't have to jump up and scream every time you succeed. But there should be some genuine happiness for you. The warning sign is when your success consistently creates discomfort. You tell them good news, and suddenly they change the subject. You accomplish something, and they immediately explain why it isn't that impressive. You share a victory, and they respond with, "That's easy. Anyone could do that. You just got lucky. Let's see how long it lasts." Well, one comment isn't enough to judge someone, but repeated dismissal can reveal something deeper. Sometimes people don't hate you, or they simply can't handle the version of you that is becoming more successful than the version they were comfortable with. And that's where envy becomes dangerous. Because envy doesn't always look like anger. Sometimes envy looks like a joke. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like fake congratulations. And sometimes it looks like someone constantly reminding you of who you used to be. Part 3, they turn everything into competition. A healthy friendship doesn't require one person to lose so the other can feel important. But hidden competition changes the entire relationship. You buy something, they need something better. You get a new opportunity, or they immediately tell you about an opportunity that's bigger. You learn something, they suddenly know more. You accomplish something, they remind you of something they accomplished years ago. At first it can seem harmless, but eventually you realize something uncomfortable. You're not having a conversation, you're competing, and you may not even be the one competing. You may simply be living your life while the other person constantly measures themselves against you. This is why observation matters. Don't just listen to someone's words, watch their emotional reactions. Watch what happens when attention moves toward you. Watch what happens when you receive praise. Watch what happens when you become more confident. Because people's true feelings often appear when they believe someone else is receiving something they wanted for themselves. Part 4, they give you backhanded compliments. One of the most subtle signs is the backhanded compliment. It sounds positive, but somehow you feel worse after hearing it. You actually look good today. I'm surprised you pulled that off. You're doing pretty well for someone like you. I didn't think you'd be successful. You finally made a good decision. The words may sound like compliments, but underneath them is a message. I don't want you to feel too good about yourself. This is why emotional intelligence requires more than listening to words. You need to pay attention to context, tone, timing, and repetition. A single awkward joke doesn't make someone your enemy. But if someone repeatedly disguises insults as compliments, it's worth noticing. You don't need to confront them immediately. You don't need to accuse them of secretly hating you. Simply observe. Because sometimes the most powerful response is not confrontation, it's information. Part 5. They only appear when you need them. Another powerful sign is imbalance. You are always there for them. They call you when they're struggling, they need advice, they need emotional support, they need favors, and you show up. But when your life becomes difficult, or suddenly they're busy. When you need support, they're unavailable. When you need someone to listen, they disappear. This doesn't automatically mean they hate you. People have their own lives and limitations. But if the relationship consistently works in only one direction, you need to question what you're actually maintaining. A friendship should not feel like a subscription service where one person constantly pays and the other constantly consumes. Real friendship has reciprocity, not perfect equality, but genuine effort from both sides. Part 6. They remember your weaknesses. This is where you need to be especially careful. When you trust someone, you eventually reveal vulnerable parts of yourself. Your fears, your failures, your insecurities, your mistakes, your past. A trustworthy friend protects that information, but an unhealthy friend may store it. And later, during an argument, they suddenly know exactly where to attack. They bring up the insecurity you confessed months ago. They use your past failure against you. They remind you of something you told them privately. That's not ordinary disagreement. That's a breach of trust. And once someone shows you that they use vulnerability as ammunition, believe the pattern. You don't have to hate them. You don't have to destroy the friendship dramatically. You simply become more selective about what you give them access to. Part 7. They try to keep you small. Sometimes people become comfortable with an old version of you. The version who had less confidence. The version who needed their approval. The version who wasn't ambitious. The version who stayed available whenever they called. Then you change. You become disciplined. You start working on yourself. You become financially independent. You start setting boundaries, and suddenly they say, "You've changed." Maybe you have, and maybe that's exactly the point. Growth will sometimes make people uncomfortable because your transformation changes the role they had in your life. The key is not to automatically assume they're jealous. Ask yourself, are they concerned because I'm genuinely making a bad decision? Or are they uncomfortable because I'm becoming harder to control? That distinction matters. Part 8. The final lesson. Here's the biggest lesson. Don't become obsessed with discovering who secretly hates you. That can become another form of insecurity. Instead, become so observant that you don't need to guess. Watch patterns, watch consistency, watch reactions. Watch how people behave when you succeed. Watch how they behave when you say no. Watch how they behave when you stop giving them unlimited access to your time and energy, and most importantly, watch how you feel around them. Do you constantly feel smaller? Do you feel like you have to hide your success? Do you feel guilty for growing? Do you feel like you're walking on eggshells? Then the problem may not be whether they secretly hate you. The problem may be that the friendship no longer gives you the respect and peace you need. You don't need to expose everyone. You don't need revenge. You don't need to announce your departure. Sometimes the strongest move is simply to reduce access. Less explaining, less sharing, less chasing, more observing, more boundaries, more focus on your own life. Because the goal isn't to become paranoid about everyone around you. The goal is to become wise enough to recognize who deserves access to you. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. But not everyone who disappoints you is your enemy either. Learn the difference. That is where real social intelligence begins. A healthy friendship doesn't require one person to lose so the other can feel important. But hidden competition can slowly change the entire relationship. You share good news, and suddenly they have something better. You get a new opportunity, and they immediately tell you about an even bigger one. You achieve something, and instead of celebrating with you, they start comparing themselves to you. At first, you might laugh it off. You might think, that's just how they are. But pay attention to the pattern, because there's a major difference between healthy competition and someone who constantly needs to prove that they're above you. A real friend can see you succeed without feeling personally defeated. They can celebrate your promotion without needing one themselves. They can compliment your achievement without immediately talking about theirs. They can watch you grow without treating your growth like a threat. But when every conversation becomes a competition, something deeper may be happening. Maybe they don't hate you. Maybe they're insecure. Maybe they're comparing their life to yours. Maybe your progress is reminding them of what they haven't accomplished yet. And that's why you shouldn't immediately label them as an enemy. Observe first. Watch what happens when attention moves toward you. Watch their facial expression when everyone compliments you. Watch whether their congratulations feel genuine or forced. Watch whether they support your success privately as well as publicly. Because human nature often reveals itself through reactions we don't consciously control. And here's something important. You don't have to compete back. Don't lower yourself to prove that you're better. Don't start bragging. Don't turn the friendship into a war. Instead, stay calm, keep building, keep improving, and let their behavior give you the information you need. Because sometimes the strongest position is simply refusing to participate in a competition that you never agreed to. You don't need to beat your friend. You need to understand your friend. And if you discover that someone can only feel good when you're doing worse, that's not a friendship you should depend on. Keep your standards high. Keep your circle intentional. And remember, your success should reveal who can genuinely celebrate you, not who can compete with you. Sometimes the most difficult people to recognize aren't the ones who openly insult you. They're the ones who hide the insult inside a compliment. You actually look really good today. I'm surprised you pulled that off. You're doing pretty well for someone who just started. I didn't think you'd actually succeed. On the surface, these words can sound positive, but something about them feels wrong, and that's exactly why you should pay attention. A genuine compliment makes you feel appreciated. A backhanded compliment often makes you feel like you need to defend yourself. Now, one awkward comment doesn't automatically mean your friend secretly dislikes you. People say stupid things, people make jokes, people sometimes communicate badly. The important thing is repetition. If someone constantly minimizes your achievements, disguises criticism as humor, or seems uncomfortable whenever you're doing well, you may be seeing a deeper pattern. And here's where understanding human nature becomes important. People don't always express envy directly. Sometimes envy appears through subtle dismissal. Instead of saying, "I wish I had what you have," they say, "It's not that impressive." Or instead of saying, "I'm jealous of your progress," they say, "You just got lucky." Instead of admitting, "I'm proud of you," they give you a compliment followed by a criticism. And if you constantly accept these comments without noticing the pattern, you may eventually start questioning your own achievements. That's the danger, not the single comment, the gradual effect. You start becoming smaller. You stop sharing your wins. You hesitate before telling people about your goals. You begin wondering whether you're actually good enough. And that's when you need to step back. Don't argue. Don't accuse them of jealousy. Don't immediately label them as enemies. Observe. Ask yourself, does this person genuinely support me? Do they celebrate me when I'm doing well? Can they compliment me without adding an insult? Do I feel confident after spending time with them? Or do I constantly feel like I need to prove myself? Because the right people don't need you to become smaller so they can feel bigger. A real friend can see your success and still feel secure about themselves. So don't become paranoid, become observant. And remember, a person's repeated reactions to your growth can tell you more than their words ever will. One of the clearest signs of an unhealthy friendship is one-sided availability. Think about it. Who calls you when they have a problem? Who needs your advice when their life falls apart? Who expects you to listen for hours when they're upset? And then ask yourself a harder question. Who is there when you are the one struggling? Because some people don't actually want friendship. They want access. They want someone they can call when they need attention, advice, money, connections, emotional support, or a favor. And as long as you're useful to them, everything feels fine. But the moment you need something in return, their energy changes. Suddenly they're busy. Suddenly they don't have time. Suddenly they don't see your messages. Suddenly, your problems are too much. Now, be careful here. One missed call doesn't mean someone doesn't care. People have responsibilities. People get overwhelmed. People have their own problems. The real warning sign is a repeated pattern of imbalance. You're always giving, they're always taking, you're always listening, they're always talking, you're always showing up, they're rarely available, and eventually you start feeling exhausted after every interaction. That's when you need to step back and observe. Ask yourself, is this friendship reciprocal, or am I simply being useful? Because genuine friendship isn't about keeping a perfect score. You don't need to count every favor. You don't need to demand equal effort every single day. But over time, there should be some sense that both people care about each other's lives. And here's something important. Don't confront someone simply because they couldn't be there once. Look at the pattern over months. Look at what happens when you stop initiating. Do they check on you? Do they ask how you're doing? Do they notice when you're absent? Or does the relationship completely disappear? Unless you restart it, that answer can tell you a lot. And if you discover that someone only remembers you when they need something, you don't need revenge. You don't need an angry speech. You don't need to announce that you're cutting them off. Simply reduce your availability. Stop being permanently accessible. Stop solving every problem. Stop giving unlimited access to your time and energy, and watch what happens. Sometimes people will suddenly become more interested in you, and sometimes they'll disappear completely. Either way, you've learned something valuable, because the goal isn't to have hundreds of people around you. The goal is to have a small circle of people who value you, not just what you can do for them. A real friend doesn't only need you, a real friend notices you. This is where friendship can become dangerous, because when you truly trust someone, you eventually reveal things you don't tell everyone. Your fears, your insecurities, your failures, your past, the things that hurt you. You share these things because you believe the person cares about you. And a genuine friend understands that vulnerability is a responsibility, not ammunition. But an unhealthy friend may remember every weakness you ever shared. Then one day, during an argument, they suddenly know exactly where to attack. They bring up the insecurity you told them about months ago. They remind you of your biggest failure. They make jokes about something you trusted them with. They take something deeply personal and turn it into a weapon. That's not just a disagreement. That's a breach of trust. But again, don't judge someone from one emotional mistake. Look for a pattern. Do they repeatedly expose private information? Do they use your insecurities to embarrass you? Do they bring up your past whenever they want to win an argument? Do they know exactly what hurts you and keep pushing that button? If the answer is consistently yes, you need to reconsider how much access this person should have to your private life. And here's the lesson. You don't have to hate someone to stop trusting them. You can forgive someone and still create boundaries. You can wish someone well and still keep your distance. You can remember the good moments without giving them unlimited access to you. Because trust isn't just about what someone says when everything is going well. Trust is revealed by what someone does with your vulnerability when they're angry. So be careful who receives the deepest parts of your story. Not everyone who listens to you deserves access to you, and sometimes the smartest thing you can do isn't exposing the person who betrayed you. It's quietly removing their access to the parts of you they no longer deserve to see. Your vulnerability is valuable. Give it to people who know how to protect it. Sometimes people don't hate you, they're simply comfortable with the old version of you, or the version who needed their approval, the version who wasn't as confident, the version who always said yes, the version who never challenged them. Then something changes. You start working on yourself, you become more disciplined, you start building your career, you become financially independent, you set boundaries, you stop explaining yourself. And suddenly they say, "You've changed." Maybe you have. And maybe that's exactly what needed to happen. Growth can make people uncomfortable because your transformation changes the relationship dynamic. The person who once felt ahead of you may suddenly feel behind. The person who is used to giving you advice may suddenly realize you're making your own decisions. The friend who is comfortable with your insecurity may become uncomfortable with your confidence. And this is where you need to become extremely careful. Don't automatically assume they're jealous. Instead, observe their behavior. When you tell them about your goals, do they encourage you or immediately tell you why you'll fail? When you make a positive change, do they support it or constantly remind you of who you used to be? When you set a boundary, do they respect it or try to make you feel guilty? When you become more successful, do they become happier for you or increasingly negative? These patterns matter because a genuine friend may challenge you. They may even tell you something you don't want to hear. But there's a difference between constructive criticism and deliberate discouragement. A real friend can say, I don't think this is the right decision, and here's why. An unhealthy friend says, you'll never be able to do that. One is concern. The other can become an attempt to keep you exactly where you are. And here's the part you need to understand. You don't have to shrink to keep people comfortable. You don't need to apologize for growing. You don't need to hide your achievements. You don't need to remain insecure just because someone preferred you that way. Keep growing, keep learning, keep improving, and let people's reactions reveal where they truly stand. Because sometimes the moment you start becoming the person you were capable of becoming is the moment you discover who genuinely supported you, and who only supported the version of you they could feel superior to. Don't become smaller to preserve a friendship. Become wiser about who deserves a place in your future. One of the biggest signs of an unhealthy friendship is what happens when you finally say no. Because people who genuinely respect you may be disappointed sometimes, but they will respect your decision. An unhealthy friend may react completely differently. You say you can't go out tonight, suddenly you're selfish. You say you don't want to lend them money, now you're acting different. You say you need some time alone. They accuse you of ignoring them. You stop answering every message immediately. They ask, what's wrong with you? Notice the pattern. The problem isn't always what you're saying. Sometimes the problem is that your boundaries are reducing their access to you. And that's when their true expectations can become visible. A healthy friendship understands that you have your own life. You have work, you have family, you have goals, you have responsibilities, and sometimes you simply need space. You shouldn't have to feel guilty for protecting your time. But here's the important distinction. A boundary isn't punishment. You aren't saying, I'm going to ignore you so you suffer. You're saying, this is what I am comfortable with, and this is what I'm not comfortable with. That's completely different. And if someone repeatedly tries to make you feel guilty for having reasonable boundaries, pay attention. They may not secretly hate you, but they may be too comfortable benefiting from your lack of boundaries. That's something you need to recognize, because the moment you start respecting yourself, certain relationships will change. Some people will respect the new boundary, some will negotiate, and some will disappear. Let them. You don't need to chase someone back into your life simply because they became uncomfortable when you started valuing yourself. Your time has value, or your energy has value, your attention has value, and access to you should not be unlimited. So the next time someone tries to make you feel guilty for saying no, don't immediately become defensive. Stay calm. Repeat your boundary and watch their response. Their reaction to your boundary can tell you more about the relationship than their words ever did. A genuine friend may not always like your boundaries, but they will respect them. And the people who only loved your availability may disappear when your availability ends. That isn't necessarily a loss. Sometimes it's clarity. Sometimes the clearest sign that a friendship has changed isn't what someone says to your face. It's what keeps coming back to you from other people. You hear that they were making jokes about you. You discover they shared something private. You find out they criticized you when you weren't there, and when you confront them, they suddenly say, it was just a joke. You're being too sensitive. I didn't mean anything by it. Now, one rumor isn't enough to destroy a friendship. People misunderstand conversations, stories get exaggerated, and sometimes information reaches you without the original context, so don't react emotionally to every piece of gossip. Observe the pattern. If the same person repeatedly discusses your private life with others, constantly criticizes you behind your back, or creates negative stories about you, that's no longer something you should casually ignore. Because a trustworthy friend doesn't need to build their reputation by damaging yours. They don't need to expose your secrets to make themselves interesting. They don't need to turn your failures into entertainment. And they certainly don't need to create an audience for your personal problems. This is where you need to understand something about social dynamics. People reveal their priorities through what they protect. A genuine friend protects your dignity when you're not in the room. They don't have to defend every decision you make. They can disagree with you. They can criticize your choices privately. But they don't turn your vulnerabilities into public entertainment. So what should you do if you discover someone has been talking about you? Don't immediately explode. Don't start a counter-gossip campaign. Don't tell everyone what they did. That only pulls you deeper into the same behavior. Instead, become quieter, share less, observe more, and if necessary, create distance. Because sometimes you don't need a dramatic confrontation to understand someone's character. Their repeated behavior already gave you the answer. And remember, not everyone who talks about you is your enemy, but if someone repeatedly damages your reputation while pretending to be your friend, you should stop giving them information they can use against you. Protect your privacy, protect your peace, and most importantly, don't waste your energy trying to control what everyone says about you. Control your behavior, control your circle, control your access. The people who truly respect you won't require you to constantly defend yourself from them. Another warning sign is when a friend becomes uncomfortable with anyone else getting close to you. At first, it might look like concern. I don't trust that person. Your new friend isn't good for you. You spend too much time with them now. Why do you even need them when you have me? One comment doesn't necessarily mean anything. But if someone repeatedly tries to control who you talk to, where you go, and who you spend time with, you need to pay attention. A healthy friend doesn't need to own your social life. They can have opinions. They can warn you about someone, but ultimately, they respect your ability to make your own decisions. An unhealthy dynamic starts when their concern becomes control. They make you feel guilty for meeting new people. They become angry when you spend time with someone else. They constantly criticize your other friendships. They create drama whenever you develop a new connection. And slowly you begin to feel like you have to choose them or everyone else. That's a dangerous position to be in because isolation makes people easier to control. The more you depend on one person for your social support, the more power that person can have over your emotional life. That's why maintaining a healthy circle matters. Have different friends, build your career, spend time with family, develop your own interests, create a life that doesn't depend entirely on one relationship. And here's the key. A genuine friend doesn't fear your growth into a bigger world. They may miss you, they may want more time with you, but they'll also be happy that you're meeting good people and experiencing new things. So don't confuse jealousy with friendship, and don't confuse control with care. If someone constantly tries to shrink your world so that they become the center of it, step back and observe. You don't have to fight them. You don't have to prove anything. Simply maintain your independence. Because the healthiest relationships don't say, "You only need me." They say, "Go build your life. I'll be here when you come back." That difference tells you everything. Here's the final sign, and it may be the most important one. Pay attention to how people react when you become a better version of yourself. You start exercising. You become more disciplined. You stop wasting your time. You start working toward your goals. You become more confident. You stop chasing people's approval. And suddenly, someone you've known for years starts making comments. You've changed. You think you're better than everyone now. You take yourself too seriously. You used to be fun. There, Sometimes you really have changed. But change isn't automatically a bad thing. Sometimes growth simply makes your old environment uncomfortable. And this is where you need to be honest with yourself. Ask, are they trying to protect me from a genuine mistake? Or are they uncomfortable because I'm no longer the person they were used to? That's the difference. A real friend can challenge your decisions while still respecting your ambition. They can tell you when you're wrong without secretly wanting you to fail. They can watch you become more successful without feeling threatened by your success. But if someone repeatedly mocks your goals, discourages your progress, minimizes your achievements, or constantly tries to pull you back toward your old habits, don't ignore that pattern. You don't need to convince them, or you don't need their permission to grow. And you certainly don't need to become smaller just to keep someone comfortable. Sometimes growth changes your friendships. Sometimes your priorities change. Sometimes your circle becomes smaller, and that's okay, because the goal isn't to keep everyone who entered your life. The goal is to build a life surrounded by people who genuinely respect who you're becoming. So don't spend your life trying to figure out who secretly hates you. Become observant instead of paranoid. Look at patterns, look at consistency, look at how people react to your success, your boundaries, your growth, and your independence. And then make your decision quietly. No revenge, or no drama, no unnecessary confrontation, just boundaries, just distance when necessary, and a stronger focus on your own life. Because sometimes losing access to the wrong people is exactly what gives you room for the right people. Your circle doesn't need to be large. It needs to be genuine. And if someone can only support you when you're beneath them, they were never truly supporting your growth. Choose people who can celebrate your victories without competing with you. People who protect your vulnerability, people who respect your boundaries, or people who are happy to see you become stronger. Because at the end of the day, the people around you should not make you question your worth. They should make it easier for you to remember it.